So, our speaker this morning, Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson, is an ordained Center for Spiritual Living minister, and he serves as the founding minister and spiritual director of the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts, which is a Centers for Spiritual Living teaching center. He brings his years of being a professional educator, visual artist, performer, ASL interpreter, author, and lover of comics and film to all areas of his life and ministry. He's a frequently sought after guest minister speaker at various churches, centers, and events. For him, ministry extends beyond the church center. He facilitates workshops related to radical self care, living with purpose, LGBTQ empowerment, exploring and expressing creativity, and more. He's both the co lead for his Moms Demand Action and the center's and the chapter's interfaith lead, and a participant in the Survivors Fellowship. When he's not teaching, speaking, writing, creating, performing, etc., he loves spending time with his family, which includes harassing his amazing grandkids. Welcome, Dr. Raymond Anderson.
Namaste, greetings. Thank you so very much, Vance. Thank you, team. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Diego. Thank you, CSL Midtown. What's up, people? It is great, as always, to be with you. So today we're going to get high, right? I mean, breathe. We're talking about higher heights. Come on now. So I want to push us into what I often refer to as Science of Mind and Spirit 4.0. And so in order to do this, there are going to be some questions that I'm going to be asking y'all and stretching and pushing the envelope. Because what did Maya say the theme for the month is? Holy status quo. No, wait, that's not it. Holy mediocrity. No, that's not. Maya said holy boldness. So if we're going to go into this space of quote unquote higher heights, then we must let go of the old paradigms. So let's say, if I were to ask you this question, when we say higher height, right? Higher heights takes us higher than where we are right now. What do we actually mean when we say higher heights takes us higher than where we are right now? We know and understand that we're not talking about the altitude, right? That we're leaving a certain level of the earth plane going 100 feet into the air. We're not talking about that. We understand that. And when we say things like, well, we lift our vision, and we lift our expectations with an upward gaze, not a downward gaze. We understand that we're not talking about the gaze of our eyes. We understand this stuff. And we understand that it's linguistic convenience. Breathe. We use a lot of words, higher power, higher self, higher vibration, higher frequency, to elevate, to ascend. We use a lot of these words. And we understand the words in the context and concept of how we're using them, but it's linguistic convenience. Dr. Holmes says, we are surrounded by and immersed in an infinite capital case good. Then he asks the question, how much of this infinite good is ours? And then he answers it, all of it. Are we in a space right here and right now? Are we in a space to accept this truth? Because if we are in a space to accept this truth, then we are ready, willing, and able to move into Science of Mind and Spirit 4.0. And if we're not, that's also fine. Just like not everyone who graduates from high school goes on to college, they are fine where they are. We are fine where we are as long as things are working, but understand that there is always more good that we can have access to. There's always more good that we can embody. It might be good for right now, but know that there is more. Now, referencing this idea of linguistic convenience and higher and elevate, etc. If I were to ask you this question, where do you find H2O in water? Or if I were to say, where is the water in agua or mizu? Where is the water? Well, if you speak Spanish, you know that, well, agua is another word, another name for another way of saying water. You're simply using a different language. Mizu, the Japanese way of saying water, it's just another way of, it says this, it's the same thing. So where do you find H2O in water? H2O is water. You see where I'm going here? We often talk about God being within us and going within and going higher and higher heights, etc. And it's for the sake of symbolism. I understand. We talk about being the light and all of this stuff, and we oftentimes vilify the darkness. And I understand. Yes, symbolic uses of the language. And yet there is something even beyond just the symbolic use of, because we're invited to now embody, not just use the words, but actually embody what the symbolism is referencing. There are oftentimes I reference the idea of, going higher with this idea of there's a skyscraper, right? Like think of any skyscraper that you can think of that's like really, really, really Freedom Tower, like really, really the Empire State Building, be really, 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 really tall. And understand that the higher the skyscraper goes, the deeper and more solid the foundation must be. So when we're in a building and you're on the first floor and you look out the window, you're going to have a certain view. And when you go to the second floor, a certain view. Same southern window, same avenue, but it's a level higher. You go to the 34th floor, same southern window, but it's on the 34th floor. So the view is different. We're still within the same building, but the perspective has changed. Our perception has changed. So in the grand scope of, there really is nowhere for us to go, quote unquote. There's nowhere to go. Our invitation with this idea of going higher is to change the quality of our mental equivalence. Change our thoughts and beliefs, change our words and communication, change how the feelings and emotions, change our actions and behaviors, so that they are more life affirming and more in alignment with what it is we are desiring to experience in life. That's what we mean by higher heights. Are we grounded in the philosophy of science of mind and spirit to such a degree that we are able to change our mental equivalence in such a way that we are now living life individually and collectively in a more harmonious, compassionate, loving, and wholly, boldly expression? Thomas A. Kempis says, the loftier the building, the deeper must the foundation be laid. To which I say, the loftier the vision, the loftier, quote unquote, the creative intention, the deeper and more anchored must the foundation of that be. When Dr. Holmes talks about being open at the top, I always add being open at the bottom, like a healthy, rooted tree. The trunk and the branches open at the top, receiving the sunlight, the roots deeply anchored, pulling nutrients through and from the deep, dark, rich soil, open at the top and bottom. So when we are talking about higher heights, we also have to talk about deeper depths. We have to also talk about what it means, rather than doing so from a consciousness of the caste system, where, typically in a minister-centric entity, the traditional church model, the minister is at the top of, and the congregation, the laity, are at the bottom. And then somewhere in between are, chaplains and et cetera, et cetera. So like Catholicism, the Pope is at the top. And then there's the cardinals and the bishops and the blah, 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 and the priests and the nuns and then those who, come in to partake of service every Sunday. How do we get beyond this caste system, even in the philosophy that says higher vibration and lower vibration? I understand, once again, for symbolic purposes, yes, but that also concept of using those words implies a higher and lower. And because of the way our consciousness of culture and civilization and society are, we tend to relegate the lower to being less significant, less important, not valid or validated, or it's worthless. How do we get beyond that to the idea of there is no hierarchy in spirit? It's more like, have you ever walked into a labyrinth and you go in and you go through and you go around and you go through and you go around and you're working your way to get to the center, and sometimes you seem to be further away, but you're actually closer than you were, and you work your way through, and then you get to the center. You're anchored and grounded in the center, and then you work your way back out into the regular everyday world. But even out in the regular everyday world, you are still centered within spirit. Voltaire said, God is a circle, circumference nowhere, center everywhere. So before you go into the labyrinth, you are at the center of God. In the center of the labyrinth, the center of God. In the bathroom, using the toilet, center of God. In traffic, center of God. Online, fussing with center of God. No matter where you are, God is. How are we embodying this to realize and to apply it in a way that shows up in our lives as greater health and well-being, physically, emotionally, with our relationships, with our finances, etc.? Because if it is not showing up in that way, then we are doing Tupperware philosophy, science of mind. We are relegating certain things to certain places, and I'm really spirit and meditation and mysticism when it comes to this particular area, not my finances. Because if you look at my finances, then perfect and whole, perfect and complete, but not with my relationships and perfect and whole and complete. But if God is all there is, then, and we are what it is wherever we go, then are we not invited to apply this concept of holy boldness wherever we go and whatever we are doing? Why would Dr. Holmes say, we are surrounded by an intelligent force and substance from which all things come? It is around us in its original state, ready and willing to take form through the impulse of our creative belief. And I add, because it's not just believing, because I can sit here and believe I'm going to win the Mega Million and be a millionaire. I can believe it, but if I don't go and purchase a ticket, right? So through the impulse of our creative mental equivalents that are ever and ever more life affirming. That's the invitation. That which God is everywhere. This intelligent force, this intelligent substance from which all things come. It's everywhere. It's everything. And because it is, just like this thing called voice, it's ever present. I can shut up right now. Oh, you couldn't hear what I was thinking? No, because I had to express it. I had to utilize this thing called oxygen, allowing it to move through my lungs, my diaphragm, through and out and over the tongue and past the lips, and creating words. That means I'm also working in conjunction with my consciousness, my mind, because I can breathe. Those aren't words, they're sounds. But I need to use my mind. I need to employ my mind. to create words that are symbols of a thing. Because I can say the word water and you can't drink that word. So the word water is a placeholder, a symbolic representation of this substance that I can go to the kitchen and drink. God is a placeholder, a word for the all that is and ever was and ever. It's placeholder. But I need to work in conjunction. We are invited to let our mental equivalents work in conjunction with the divine that we are. Otherwise, we are playing small. Otherwise, we are Tupperwaring our divinity. We're taking a quick sip of the divine rather than saturated in and as the divine. It's important to know, once again, referencing this idea of linguistic convenience and symbolism, when Dr. Holmes references the idea and he says, it is right that we should be successful, for otherwise, spirit is not expressed. Spirit's always going to be expressed. Question is, how is it being expressed? Back to what Dr. Holmes said. The divine cannot lack for anything, and we should not lack for anything that makes life worthwhile here on earth. It is very important to recognize and understand that what he is referring to as success is success in a life-affirming manner, not success as the collective consciousness would have us believe that success is or means. Because we could very easily say, oh, well, Jim Jones was successful in what was his intention. Hitler was successful in what was his intention. Success is not the thing. It is, one, are we in alignment with the success that spirit is as life-affirming, love, joy, holy boldness, our sacredness? Or are we using the same creative powers, the same creative force, the same divinity to do atrocious things? Because the same power that those men and others use is the same power that we are referencing. As Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor would often remind us, referencing electricity, you can use electricity to light a lamp or cook a meal. You can also use it to hurt and harm and execute a living being. Now, so our question becomes, how are we using our divinity? How are we embodying our divinity? How are we applying our divinity? Because when I'm so worried about, I'm using faith in a non-life affirming way. It's the same power. I can use faith in a life affirming way, vision, prayer, meditation, or a non-life affirming way, worry. It's the same power. Which end of the power? Which application of the power? Which embodiment of the power am I engaged in? That's the question. Love. The Greeks would say love, hub. And we say, love, be love, 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 love. Yes, but the Greeks have various words for love. Love, mania, is using the power of love in a non-life affirming way. Love that is the most life affirming is agape. Love that has no conditions. I love you simply because I love you. It's still love. Love that drives jealousy, non-life affirming. Love that embodies and sets people free and heals, life affirming. How are we? Because it's one thing to talk about it. It's a completely different thing to actually embody it and live from it. So when Dr. Holmes says of this idea of communion, he says, Communion with the Spirit is one of the greatest privileges. By communion, we mean silently entering into divine harmony and beauty until we feel that harmony and beauty in our own souls, in our own minds. Now, this word communion, we think communion, and many of us may think, oh, Catholicism. But let's pause for a moment for the sake of linguistic convenience. The prefix com means to be with, together, in association, and completely, such as communion, communicate, communication, community, compassion. Same prefix. So when we are talking about this idea of communion, what we are referring to as communion with Spirit, one of the greatest revelations of life, realizations of life, we are recognizing that we are already right now with and as Spirit. That communion is our embodiment of this realization. When Meister Eckhart says, the eye which I see God is the same eye in which God sees me, we understand this is poetry. It's symbolism. Because Meister Eckhart also says, between me and God, there is no between. Breathe that in. Between me and God, there is no between. In all the ways that I recognize that which I call God, God is in reciprocal fashion recognizing itself as me. When I see God in nature, when I see God in art, when I see God in the face of another, God sees me. When I hear God in music, in the wind, in the voice of another, God hears me. When I reach out and touch any God in the soil of the garden, God in the clay on the potter's wheel, God in the hug or the elbow tap with another, God touches me. When I feel joy, love, sadness, grief, God feels me. And this is the same truth for each and every one of us. So keeping in mind, Dr. Holmes said, for the only God you and I will ever know is the one that we embody. Never forget that. The only God you and I will ever know is the one we embody. If we are going to go into this realm of higher heights and elevating consciousness, etc., then it begins with us recognizing and realizing, Science of Mind and Spirit 4.0, that there is no separation between what we are and what God is. There is only that which God is, incarnating itself, expressing itself, breathing itself as each and every one of us, and everything that is yet to be. It's all the divine. Breathe. Whew. So in reference, in closing this idea of higher heights, keep in mind, there is nowhere to go. Right where you are, God is. Not simply in you, but that which it is must be you. There is only one mind, and that mind is God. There is only one life, and that life is God. And that life is beautiful and powerful and magnificent and more things than words could ever quantify. And that life is you right now. Breathe. Much love and appreciation. Namaste.